You ever had a day where everything seems to happen at once? Then you must know what Baldwin was thinking. If you ever really want to take your writing seriously, and I'm not just talking about academic writing, but writing in general, really getting into how the experts do it can be one of the best things you can do. Everybody imitates at first. And if I was to do it again, if I was to try to be a creative writing person next time around, I would dissect utterly everything Baldwin does. We're reading some pretty great stuff this semester, but I think that if I were to stack them all up, Baldwin must be the best pure writer out there. And while I'm going to talk about a lot of thematic issues here, we got to at least acknowledge just how good he is. And I think that's with the way he starts us off. First impressions are a very big deal, and it's something I've been talking to you about in academic writing. But it's that way in any type of writing, and look at just the kind of job he does here. On the 29th of July in 1943, my father died. On the same day, a few hours later, his last child was born. Well, the first sentence really gets you as, okay, we're talking something monumental. And then you get this wonderful comparison after that. Over a month before this, while all our energies were concentrated in waiting for these events, there had been, in Detroit, one of the bloodiest race riots of the century. A few hours after my father's funeral, while he lay in state in the Undertaker's chapel, a race riot broke out in Harlem. On the morning of the 3rd of August, we drove my father to the graveyard through a wilderness of smashed plate glass. Now, first, the language here. I know you can just picture the smashed plate glass as you're trying to get to a graveyard. It's just one heck of an image. But the biggest thing I love about this is the juxtaposition. He's taking all these different elements and combining them into showing you what a really complex day this is going to be, and what a really complex article this is going to be. There's tension in the things he puts together, and it raises the stakes of the article. And if I could do half as well as this in hooking the reader, I would be rich. Try to pick up some hints from these people we're looking at, and the contrasting of different elements to show a very complex picture, that's just something that this story excels at. Now, another thing that you're going to see a lot of in Baldwin's story is displacement. Displacement is an old psychoanalytic term when negative feelings are displaced onto another, less threatening subject with the slightest trigger. The idea is that if you're angry with somebody, you're probably going to take it out on the first person you see, not necessarily the person you're angriest with. If we have strong feelings, we're just looking for a release. And that release doesn't necessarily have to be the trigger of our strong feelings. And there's 3 big examples in here. The father's attacks on his family, and the family's attacks on the father, and the fear that goes back and forth. The kids knew that the father was tormented, was negative, and they assumed that it was because of them. Probably was not. And when the father did try to reach out and never succeeded, he probably didn't realize the root cause either. We have the wonderful scene in New Jersey of a very upset Baldwin throwing a glass at a waitress. Was he angry at her specifically? No, he was angry at a larger thing. He was just looking for someone on whom he could lash out. Didn't go that great, but it's a great example of, I have this anger, I need somewhere to release it. Here it is. Not necessarily the person who deserved it, but that tends to be how anger works. Then we have Harlem exploding into mob violence. And this was because a confrontation at a hotel. But it wasn't really because of a confrontation at a hotel. It was because of the long-term history of African Americans, and specifically the fact that a lot of African American men were going down south for military training and experiencing fairly rotten treatment. So, 3 really great examples of displacement. There's 3 sections in this story. Coincidence? Another big thing about this was it was a memoir of Baldwin reaching what would be true adulthood. And I don't mean adulthood as in you hit a number or something, because as we're going to see in a second, that doesn't always work out. It was him becoming more mature. When I was 18, I was utterly and completely convinced that I'd finally seen what life was like. Now that I'm 137, or something like that, it's clear to me just what an inexperienced jerk I was at the age of 18. And my perception of when I was growing up was much after when I would have said so at the time. So it's a question. How do we mark these things? How do we mark when you're finally adult, when you're finally mature? We could go by the obvious: birthdays. However, finding a good standard to work for is a little bit hard. In most countries, 18 is the age where you're legally considered an adult. Not all countries, though. It goes anywhere from 14 in Saudi Arabia, 9 lunar years in Iran, sheesh, all the way up to a number of countries and places where you're 21 before you hit what they call the age of majority, when you're legally considered an adult. There's quite a range there from 9 to 21. Does it mean people are just more mature in some places than others? Let's compare it to another marker. When you can vote. This is fairly widely established at 18. But there are a few places who allow you to vote at 16 or 17. So does that mean we guarantee that 18, hey, you're an adult now? Well, the age you can purchase alcohol. There's nowhere under 16, and there's very few 16s. There's a decent amount of 18s. America is up at 21. There are places where the minimum age is 25. And then there's places where you can't drink at all. So you can be considered an adult in terms of being able to be arrested, and not be considered an adult in terms of voting. And definitely not considered an adult in terms of when you can drink. You ready for a strange one now? The age of consent for sex is much lower than the age of consent for drinking or voting. Numbers seem to be kind of a wash here because we're getting tons of different ones. I mean, even look in North America where you have anything from, good God, 12 in some parts of Mexico, all the way up to 15, 16, and 17 throughout America. It's down to 13 in some parts of South America. It's all just really strange. So there's so much variance between the numbers, I don't really think we can classify that as a good determining factor. Indeed, psychologists say that the average brain doesn't reach full maturity until the age of 25. So why in the hell do we give you the vote then? Or allow you to have sex but not allow you to drink? Maybe it's something else. Maybe being an adult means hitting certain milestones. And when I ask my students about what milestones make you an adult, we get such things as settled in the career, have a family, own a house. Well, there's problems here with most of these. The average age of home buyers is going up and up. 32 is the median age of home buyers, which is much older than even the psychological age from the neuroscans. If you don't buy a house until you're 32. Does that mean a 30-year-old is generally going to be mature or immature? It seems like a bad milestone because the number keeps getting bumped up. Maybe when you're settled in your career. Well, here's the thing about that. There's something called underemployment when you don't have employment commensurate with your level of education. And in some fields, it's more prominent than others. Criminal justice has over a 68% rate of underemployment, which means that 3 out of every 5 criminal justice majors don't have a job that requires their degree. Apparently, if you want a degree which is going to lead you to a job in your field, you're better off going for engineering. It means it's going to be really hard for you to establish yourself in your career if you're going to start off that far behind. And then there's the fact that you are going to be changing jobs an awful lot. At one point, they used to say the average person would have 7 jobs over the course of their life. According to this chart, it seems like it's going to be a lot higher. But that also includes career-like changes. Many people will switch directions once they hit a certain point. So if you're going to switch directions when you hit 45, is having a career a marker of maturity? You don't all of a sudden become less mature. What about the other milestones, like getting married? Well, according to that, that's going up and up and up. In the year 2000, it was a little under 27 for men, where in 1950 it was 23. Does that mean we're taking longer to get mature now? Or are there other factors at work? And you can look at a bunch of charts, and it continues to go up from there. 2014, 29.3 years old for men, 27.0 for women. Does that mean that women are by nature more mature? Then we have attitudes. If maturity is not a case of milestones, is not a case of a number, maybe it's a case of attitudes. And you look at what the experts say are attitudes of mature people. And some of the ones that come up frequently are self-reliance. If you take initiative to take care of stuff yourself. Independent thought. See, this is a weird one because when I was 16 to 20, I swore that I didn't care what people thought of me. Only later, when I got much older and actually didn't care what people thought of me, did I realize how much I really did care about what people thought of me when I was a teen. So when are we able to judge this? Another attitude that we use as a marker is being able to take responsibility, to take blame, to apologize. And their scheduling, being able to apply a structure to your life. Other things tend to happen, though. When you hit your 30s, your amount of friends go down. Hence the old joke that the real miracle of Jesus was that he was in his 30s and had 12 close friends. So as you become mature, you have less friends? Seems kind of wrong, huh? Then there's the ones that people amongst themselves typically put as a marker of being mature. Being able to tell the weather because your shoulder is hurting. I don't know, my hip has been hurting, so I think we're probably in for cold weather. Like, It's depressing. But not as depressing as this other sign of maturity that I've experienced music I like in the grocery store. When the hell did that happen? It's another marker of being mature is that you have no idea who a lot of very popular people are. Who are these people? If you've ever found yourself saying back in my day or comparing your teenage years to how teens act nowadays, you're probably fairly mature, i.e. old. Then there's cussing, which is a really weird one, because when we're a kid, we think that cussing is a sign of maturity. Once you become an adult, cussing becomes a whole lot more childish. Oh, so much for all of those. Baldwin's answer is a little more complex. It began to seem that one would have to hold in the mind forever 2 ideas which seemed to be in opposition. The first idea was acceptance, the acceptance totally without rancor of life as it is and men as they are. In light of this idea, it goes without saying that injustice is a commonplace. That's a sentence that should make you go, whoa. We see things as they are, so therefore we see that people suck. And I think that a lot of college students are hitting this stage where they don't think that life is fair, where they think we're doomed. But this did not mean that one could be complacent, for the second idea was of equal power, that one must never in one's own life accept these injustices as commonplace, but must fight them with all one's strength. This is a good way, if there is one, to think of maturity. It's not a milestone, it's not just an attitude about something weird, and it's not a number. It's the idea that you have to balance an understanding of the world with the desire to still change it. Thinking that we're doomed? Anyone can do that. Thinking that we're doomed and still looking for things to do to make the world a better place? It's Baldwin's definition of maturity. And it's one I kind of like. You could spend hours just going through Baldwin's word choice and through a lot of different Baldwin attributes. He is a heck of a writer. But for our purposes, I think the main thing we should take from this is the interconnectedness of everything. So much different stuff was happening to Baldwin, and he was able to tie father death, childhood, preaching, New Jersey, race riots, all into a coherent picture. Not a simple picture, but a coherent picture. As writers, this is something that everyone should strive to be half as good at as Baldwin. And as readers, seeing how he takes such care to tie these things together means that it puts that much more emphasis on our ability to do a good reading and a good analysis. I wish I was half as good as this guy. It's nice to have heroes. See you next video.